Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. We will wait 2 minutes for more people to join us, and then we will start presenting. So there's 1 minute past 12. Let's wait 1 more minute, and then we'll start with our presentation. Few seconds left, so we start soon. Let's wait for it to get to 2 minutes past 12, according to my clock. So now it's 2 minutes past 12. So let's start. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to our second webinar for our second open call of MediaFutures. We have an exciting program with great panelists prepared for you today. We will hear some teams of our first cohort, and particularly what their experience was like at MediaFutures and how you can get the most out of the program, and also find out some secret tips on how to apply successfully. You will also get the chance to ask questions to all of the speakers. So please make sure to use our chat and add their questions, and we will answer them later on. Just a kind note that only speakers have the opportunity to speak, but participants can ask questions directly via the chat. Sorry, I'm having some technical problems here. So we will do the best to address the questions. And in case you want to have a second look, we will upload our webinar on our YouTube channel of MediaFutures, where you can also access all our videos related to the program. So myself, I'm Alexandra Rayzhekov. I'm the coordinator of MediaFutures. I work at the Leibniz University of Hanover as coordinator for European projects, and also at the Leibniz Information Center for Science as head of transfer. Today, we have the great pleasure to have with us some of our exceptional MediaFutures partners, and more particularly, we have with us Luis from URCAM, who is Art Tech Coordination Officer. Moreover, we have Igor, who is European R&D project consultant at Ampala Innovation. And we have Fernanda, who works as junior project manager at NMA. And last but not least, we have our exceptional colleague, Gerrit, who is deputy coordinator for MediaFutures and works as project manager and business developer at the Leibniz University of Hanover. So a warm welcome to our speakers from the MediaFutures Consortium. And we have some exceptional participants of our first cohort at MediaFutures. And that is the point of the webinar today, to talk briefly about the project and delve more on the experience made by our first cohort. So we have with us today Dejha and Ania, who are co-founders of Operator and represent the artist track. And they participated in MediaFutures via their artwork Soft Evidence. Moreover, we have Georgina, who is a researcher and co-founder of Sure Together, representing her Startup for Citizens project, People Supported Intelligence. And last but not least, we have with us Antoni, a new media artist working in the fields of music, theater, and digital arts, representing the Startup Meets Artist project, JECT-SENSE. So a very warm welcome to you as well, and thank you for being with us today. So let's see the overview of our webinar and what we have planned for you today. So we want to give a very brief overview into MediaFutures and how we support artists and startups. Then we will hear about our projects from our first cohort. And we will start with Soft Evidence, then we will give the floor to People Supported Intelligence, and last but not least, Antoni will share the JECT-SENSE experience from the Startup Meets Artist track. So after a very short intro of these projects, we will hear their journey and experience in MediaFutures. Please make sure to ask questions to our teams, add them in the chat We'll select as many questions as possible for our Q&A session towards the later part of our webinar. And very important, if you want to participate in our Startup Meets Artist track and you're still looking for an artist or a startup to collaborate with, we offer our free matchmaking session after our Q&A session. So this lasts until 7 p.m. Central European time. So that's a great opportunity, and please make sure to take advantage from it and benefit from it. Now, I would like to give some information about the project and what it is about. So MediaFutures is funded by the European Commission under the Age 2020 scheme, and it is a data-driven innovation hub for the media value chain. Particularly, we are, let's say, an accelerator for startups, SMEs, and artists that work together to tackle the current media challenges. Let's see our consortium. MediaFutures consists of 10 fantastic partners in the next slide, which are some of the strongest organizations in Europe in the domains of media, entrepreneurship, art, data science, journalism, innovation, ethics, and law. So we really have an interdisciplinary consortium, which is uniquely qualified in each of these areas to help accelerate startups and help artists grow. We can also location of our partners in the next slide. As you can see, MediaFutures is represented in Germany, the UK, France, Spain, Belgium, and Italy. Thus, we bundle the expertise of this partner, a strong and robust support program for startups, artists, and SMEs working in media, enabling them to thrive. Moving on, we can see the challenges that we tackle in MediaFutures. At the heart of MediaFutures lies the issue of misinformation, disinformation, which is widespread today. As we know, there are many complex challenges in the media. Nowadays, there are challenges related to the rise of populism and also online content, which is optimized for clicks and shaping narratives in order to gain popularity, rather than basing content on solid facts, data, and evidence. Misinformation has always existed since the ancient times. Nowadays, however, we have very powerful AI tools that further accelerate potentially the spread of misinformation and disinformation. This leads to social phenomena such as dwindling public trust when it comes to very crucial societal issues, including public health. Also, trust in democratic institutions and elections can be undermined, especially when we face many great challenges nowadays, such as climate change and many other important issues. So we want to find solutions and support innovative artists, startups, and SMEs to come up with novel products and artworks that tackle the issues of misinformation and disinformation and other related issues such as hate speech and the widespread spread of harmful content. So let's see in the next slide the challenges that we are aiming to tackle in MediaFutures. So we are exploring the critical factors that impact how people engage with quality journalism, science education, and digital citizenship. We define an inclusive innovation program and enable synergies between entrepreneurs and creatives. In that sense, we organize an accelerator, residency, and support program addressing pressing technical, economic, and societal challenges in the media value chain. In this framework, we provide data and experimentation facilities for the winners of this competition to test and nurture their ideas. Overall, MediaFutures has a duration of 3 years, and during these 3 years, MediaFutures will support 51 startups and 43 artists, managing an innovation fund of 2.5 million euros, which is very generously allocated by the European Commission, with the objective to solve common concerns around funding and access to mentoring and technical, legal, business, media, and sustainability matters. So last but not least, we want to create toolkits and best practices for innovators, creatives, and other stakeholders to achieve greater traction for their citizen-centric initiatives. So that being said, if you are a startup, artist, or an entrepreneur that wants to address some of the challenges, you came up to the right place. Our program is customized on the current needs and societal challenges of the media sector. We therefore look for startups and artists that have ideas to use data and AI in innovative ways to engage people with quality journalism, science education, and digital citizenship. Combating misinformation and disinformation is one core subject of our program. So what is in for you? We can see that we offer up to 80k euros of equity-free funding for startups and up to 40k equity-free funding for artists. But you can also count on the support, mentoring, training, and advice, as well as the high level of expertise of our consortium. Namely, MediaFutures offers a customized program, which is uniquely set up by the consortium partners during these 3 years. You furthermore have the chance to get access to exclusive networking events and opportunities to gain exposure and get in touch with investors, customers, cultural institutions, and more. So MediaFutures, as we can see in the next slide, is organized in 3 tracks. We have the Startup for Citizens track, which is an accelerator program for standalone startups, entrepreneurs, or SMEs. Then we have the Artist for Media track, which offers a 6-month residency program for artists. The third track, our Startup Meets Artist, or short SMA track, is our most innovative track and supports joint projects between artists and startups, leveraging the tech and business expertise of startups, as well as the creativity of artists. This track is truly a pioneering effort and a unique opportunity when it comes to the media domain. In the next slide, we can see how the program is set up. There are various stages, for example, start, build, and exhibit phase, and we can see the different routes that each track follows. And kind of note that MediaFutures is a very ambitious and demanding program, so here you will participate in some first trainings and build up upon your project proposals. We believe that this will enhance your business model and pitch decks if you are a startup, and your artistic proposals if you are an artist. And that's for the first phase of the program, you receive your first funding of 5K after participating in the pitching competition, presenting your enhanced work and proposals. So everyone participating in this competition receives this initial round of funding of 5K, but only the most promising teams will proceed to the build phase. As you can see, in the SFC track, which is for standalone startups, 3 out of 8 teams will proceed to the next phase. Similar to that, just 4 out of 11 SMA teams, so mixed startup artistic teams will proceed to the build phase. The build phase is where most trainings, mentoring sessions, networking events, and the overall majority of work happens. This is also reflected in the funding you will receive at this phase. The Artists for Media track is special in a sense that artists will directly enter the build phase once chosen to participate in the residency program. After 5 months of hard work in the build phase, we will compare the results in a final demo day. The most promising teams will receive a prize of 10K for startups and 5K for artists. So please consider the deadlines that are added in our next slides. The open call is already launched in November of last year, and it closes this January, 27 January at 12 p.m. noon. The results of the applications will be communicated in March 2022. And afterwards, the program will start in April 2022 with a duration of 6 months. So please consider this planning, which is very important. Now, let's go to our next slide, and we would like to draw your attention to a unique opportunity to become part of MediaFutures in a different way. We are frequently looking for entrepreneurs, artists, and creatives, also people in the media sector or people who are enthusiastic about media to join our ambassadors network and help us to promote MediaFutures. We will add in the chat later on the link that directs you to the application part of our website so that you can join our ambassadors network. The ambassadors network is a great opportunity to do just that. You will be part of the MediaFutures community, and given the opportunity, you can also participate in some of our exclusive trainings with our artists and entrepreneurs to sharpen your skills in media and digital innovation. So if you're ready for that, please take a look and consider this as well. Now, let's move on to the most important part of our webinar. Namely, we will give the floor to our artists and entrepreneurs of our first cohort. So, that being said, I would like to hand over to our first team, Dejha and Ania, to present their artwork, Soft Evidence. Dejha and Ania, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us, MediaFutures. My name is Dejha.
And I'm Ania Catherine.
And Ania and I have a collaborative practice merging creative technology, performance art, and large-scale immersive environments. So I think today it would be best to start to talk about soft evidence, and we're here to answer any questions and speak about our experience in the MediaFutures project.
We figured that it's a bit easier to share more in a condensed period of time with a video that we've made. So we're going to share a portion of that video, and then we can return for last comment.
And the title of the project is Soft Evidence, and this is a slow synthetic series of cinema. And we were specifically responding to, within the realm of mis and disinformation, AV manipulation, and synthetic media. And I'll have the video explain the rest.
From 2021, Soft Evidence by Ania Catherine and Dejha is a slow synthetic cinema series depicting events that never happened, 9 scenes and testimony. Using AI, computer vision, machine learning, and deep learning, the artists created synthetic media vignettes, deep fakes, with no trace of AV manipulation. The word deepfake typically conjures up images of face-swapped politicians speaking, celebrities saying ridiculous things, or even, which is the technique's most popular and darkest use, personal attacks via non-consensual sexual imagery and pornography. Soft Evidence considers 2 major prongs of the issue. One, doing something they have never done, being somewhere they've never been, or saying something they have never said. And 2, the introduction of plausible deniability, the liar's dividend, which enables people to escape accountability for actions caught on photo or video. The intersection of social power and privilege cannot be overstated. Considering deepfake's potential for political polarization, the artists strategically depict scenes that are apolitical in content in a very naturalistic, classic cinema aesthetic. The artists also depict an erotic scene of love between 2 women. They intentionally take face swapping, a technique primarily used as a tool for sexual violence against women, to depict a moment of consensual queer intimacy. Audiences engage with the work on Telegram via an unfolding thread of video, image, text, links, and voice notes in a closed group operated by a mix of actors and real people. This digital surface is a conceptual choice as it draws attention to the rampant distribution of deepfakes and other synthetic media on messaging apps. The work will also manifest physically in an immersive experience culminating in a rich resource and practical takeaway informed by the artist's conversations with the world's leading experts in deepfake creation, detection, ethics, and policy throughout their process. Soft Evidence incites productive confusion and provides a neutral ground for conversation about AV manipulation, a place to find commonality in learning to navigate a synthetic future.
So that gives a bit of an overview about our project, and the one aspect that it was about to get into was our use of data. And for us, in order to create deepfakes, there's a way that you can do it where you need quite a bit of data to do this. And so one way is to scrape the internet for images or use pre-existing data sets. And even open data sets, just because they're open doesn't mean that they were consensually and procured and free of problematic issues. And so we decided to circumvent that issue altogether by creating our own data set, which we shot in Mexico City over a course of 5 days. And then we developed a deepfake algorithm and trained a deepfake model in order to create the data subject where we face swapped Ania, who was actually
I was the body double.
With our source subject, Karina.
Yeah, and I think the other details, maybe there were some questions that we can touch on some of the other key aspects of the issue, but that's a quick overview.
Thank you so much, Ania and Dejha. Truly an impressive work of art. Now, let's move over to our startup. We have with us Georgina Denis, co-founder of Suru Together, to present her project, People-Supported Intelligence. Georgina, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Alexandra. I hope everyone can hear me well. If not, just please put it in the chat. My name's Georgie Denis, and I'm CEO at a startup called Suru Together, where we have developed our platform, People-Supported Intelligence, or SCI. SCI is a platform for civic organizations that struggle to engage their communities and leverage the intelligence of their communities in their decision making in order to make decisions and policies that actually fit the communities that they serve. I'm really grateful to MediaFutures for the opportunity to share with you guys who we are, what we've done as part of the program, and why it's so important to us. And what the next steps are for SCI. I'm going to start with just a bit of background to myself and about the other co-founder at Suru, Nicolo. So my name's Georgie, and I have experience in public sector management, where over the last 7 years or so, I've been supporting public sector organizations, so civic organizations, to interface with their service users. So anyone that uses services within a municipality or in a local government in order to improve those services so that it actually meets the communities that they serve. And in the public sector world, this is super difficult to do. It's really hard to reach a representative group of people. It's difficult to bring people together, particularly with COVID, in things like town halls or citizens' assemblies. It takes a lot of time and logistics to do this kind of participatory decision-making in the civic space. And that means that sometimes it can be a one-off initiative rather than participatory, like deliberative democracy is the norm for how decisions are always made. So it was really important for me to find a way to make deliberative democracy and civic participation a lot easier. Especially because these conversations around social issues amongst people within a community happen, and they happen all the time. And actually they happen in spaces where it's really hard for public sector organizations to listen in, to ask questions, and to learn from those communities. So I'm talking about online spaces. A local issue might be discussed in a viral Twitter thread or on Facebook or in other online spaces where actually they're not really built to be super healthy spaces to have this kind of dialogue. And it's really difficult for everyone to have their say, to use their voice in a really meaningful way. Just like Alexandra said at the start, these spaces can bias the conversations. They can lead to echo chambers, and there are problems with recommender systems. That means that people in a community might not might find it challenging to access different opinions in order to learn another perspective and use that to guide how they behave as a citizen in a space. So what we did at Suru is develop people-supported intelligence. So this is what we are calling the first collective intelligence audio platform for civic organizations who struggle to leverage the intelligence of their local communities. And SCI has really been built to remove some of the challenges with online deliberative democracy, because it provides a civic organization like a local government the opportunity to have very large scale audio conversations with their community, where people now are actually using their voice to have their say around really tricky, challenging social topics, rather than opinion posting online or looking at likes as a proxy for what the community actually wants to happen in their local spaces. With SCI, what we've built is a really social, manageable way for civic organizations to consult their communities at scale, because we automatically facilitate small group discussions about tricky social topics. And the reason we use small group discussions with our platform is that people behave really differently in very large online calls as they do in small group discussions. In small groups, it's easier for people to share stories, share perspectives, and resolve conflict, unlike if you have very large group discussions or you're using very open platforms to ask these questions of your community. So that's kind of what we're providing with the development of SCI. An important thing to share is that SCI co-founder Nicolo is an expert in collective intelligence, and that's really what we're providing to local government organizations, because SCI isn't a way to find sort of like what's the most popular opinion, but rather what is the best thing to do for this community. And so if you have lots of people with very nuanced perspectives, we support you to integrate all of those perspectives so that your community can make sense of those themselves and come up with what they think is the best way forward for you as an organization. And our focus on collective intelligence is really intentional, because actually what we find is that if you support people to integrate perspectives and ideas, data and information in a really manageable way, that community itself can come up with the solutions to support the challenges that they all face. So SCI right now is in beta. We are testing the platform with a number of civic organizations in the UK, but also in the US, so that they can ask their communities a question and the community can be involved in a large-scale deliberative consultation where they make sense of all of the ideas and the community decide what they recommend their local government do. And I'm going to stop there. Happy to answer any questions, particularly about how MediaFutures helped us get to this phase to build this platform that supports more civil, social, and manageable consultations with communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. Indeed, an innovative approach to drive forward digital democracy. And last but not least, we have Antoni with us today to present JECT-SENSE, a project from our innovative startup meets artist track. Antoni, the floor is yours.
You, Antoni.
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So thank you for having me. I will be presenting the project JECT-SENSE, and more specifically the artwork Fragile Perspectives. I would like to maybe try to share my screen and to show you a short video. Please let me know if you can also hear the sound.
Engaging with the vast landscapes of monthly or even weekly news is tricky. Most journalists can only perceive a fragment of the content that is published, even in a single day. Fragments that can also be limited in terms of access, language, and place of publication. Our JECT-SENSE art tech collaboration brings together JECT-AI, a startup offering a text-based product for journalists to engage more creatively with news landscapes, and artist Antoni Rayzhekov and curator Claudia Schnug. Most printed news is published as text. However, people are conditioned to use diverse sensory cues, such as visual ones, to learn and gain new insights. In response, our art-tech collaboration has developed new 2D and 3D visualizations in digital forms for use by journalists and editors. Each 2D visualization is designed to help journalists to acquire new insights and opportunities from the news published on a topic of interest. And the richer 3D visualizations go further, reducing multiple dimensions of news information from thousands of published stories to three-dimensional landscapes that are easier to understand, to explore, and to discover phenomena from. Phenomena such as news bias and underreporting. Moreover, news often reflects our views and perspectives on the world. Although these seem more often than not to be fixed, they can easily be changed. Our own uncertainties and the diverse external influences that we are exposed to contribute to this fragility. Based on JECT-AI's reduction of the multiple dimensions of news information, different three-dimensional landscapes are bent into objects as physical representations of news topics and constructed in glass. Furthermore, each landscape is then sonified and interwoven into a sound landscape around the physical glass sculpture to create an installation.
5 objects representing topics such as censorship, climate crisis, and the pandemic were produced. The glass is mounted on metal stands on top of loudspeakers. Experiencing the tension of the glass pieces on vibrating metal makes the audience aware of the fragility of the perspectives that are generated by the news consumed.
Okay, this is just a short presentation of our piece. What is interesting is that actually we decided to somehow create a project that is rather very ambitious and having 2 parallel lines, so to say. In one aspect, to enhance the JECT-AI web presence and the services by analyzing the news, millions of news. This is based on the creative index of JECT-AI. And from second side is creating this tangible artwork, employing artificial intelligence to analyze this news landscape, use 3D printing and then glass blowing and sonification to create this 5-piece installation. I think what's the most important aspect for me as an artist was the undertaking this ambitious project and actually within the frame of the MediaFutures to realize this project. And currently we continue to collaborate with JECT-AI actually, and in parallel we are disseminating the artwork and writing an article. So I would say that in the course of the residency, it was quite interesting to go very deep into the JECT-AI software, to work together to create custom software that is as useful for them as also serves as a basis for the artwork. So I would say this was something like a very tight partnership and collaboration. So this is in short.
Thank you, Antoni. It is really exciting. Oh, if you can mute your microphone because there is an echo. Thank you so much. It is really exciting to see what can be achieved when startups and artists work together, what synergies can be leveraged, and how this can be channeled in creative ways to generate unique art and new products. So JECT-SENSE is certainly a great example. Now, I would like to hand over to Luis as we proceed with our next segment in order to discuss the experience and journey of our fantastic teams. Please make sure to add your questions in the chat. Luis, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So yeah, I think this moment is more an open discussion with the 3 teams that we supported during the first call. The idea here is for them to explain how they benefited from MediaFutures and how maybe if they can give you some pieces of advice on how to handle it, how to apply also, if they remember a few tips on how they wrote their application. So maybe we'll start with one first question, which is what part of the acceleration or residency program was the most beneficial to your project? And as I can see, Georgina, maybe do you want to first answer? That would be
Absolutely.
great.
So I think, so definitely the build phase, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity that's really unique in what MediaFutures present, is the resources and the support to actually build out our idea. With MediaFutures, we built our MVP, which we're now testing with civic organizations, and I haven't come across an accelerator that really supports people to go from idea to build. So I think that phase was the most beneficial. The phase that delivered way more value than I was expected going into the MediaFutures program was the start phase, because with the support in the start phase, we were able to create our first dynamic demo, like our clickable prototype, which we then used to hold our customer discovery conversations with different civic organizations across Europe and in the UK. And that really helped us be ready to build. And so actually, when that phase of MediaFutures started, we were on track, and we could develop our MVP in the time of the program. So I think I wasn't expecting the start phase to be as valuable, but actually it helped us really accelerate as quickly as possible and create an MVP in the build phase that we can actually test now.
For this testimony, it's true that the start phase, which is the first month, so this year is going to be April 2022, it's very intense. There are many training sessions, meetings, etc. But it's good to have this kind of a testimony to show that it led to something interesting, and it's worth going through this first month. Ania and Dejha, do you want to add something regarding what was beneficial for you in MediaFutures?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of aspects of the program that I found very helpful and were key in soft evidence turning out the way that it did. A few things that really stood out for us. It was nice to be in a community where everyone through the conversations and the training sessions were really pushing each other and asking difficult questions about the ethics of how they're using data, how we're using technology, what the intentions behind the technology are, and just being really specific and critical with those questions helped, because it's difficult. There's often easier ways to if you are also not looking under the hood and asking bigger questions and philosophical questions about how you're using technology or how you're using data. So that was a big part of it, as well as there was one other aspect we talked about.
Well, I think the driving need to have the project result in an educational aspect was something that allowed us to frame the purpose of the project in a way that we probably wouldn't have if we weren't part of the MediaFutures program. And I think it also allowed us to extend into meaningful conversations with scholars and academics within the industry of deepfakes and synthetic media and activists as well, to really understand the nuances of the issue and to understand how communities are being affected by synthetic media in a sort of real world use case. And this aspect really allowed us to dial in the work to have this benefit when it finally reaches an exhibition standpoint.
Antoni, maybe do you want to add something?
I think that it's a unique opportunity indeed to create a large-scale project. In our case, It was a very ambitious project, as I said, but there is nothing better than that, I think, to undertake such challenge. Of course, one should keep in mind that there are a lot of other time-based requirements, including a lot of meetings. So good planning is very, very important. So on one hand, I think it's good to undertake such challenge. On the other hand, I think it's very important to. And for me personally, it was amazing to work with such a resource like Millions of News. So this somehow enriched my artistic practice, and actually there are a lot of new projects that are coming out from it. From one side, from another side, based on all the trainings that we had the opportunity to have, I learned a lot, and I think it was incredibly beneficial for all of us, for the entire team. Also taking in account that in our team we have a curator in the face of Claudia Schnuck. This helped a lot for the communication between me and the startup. So I think good planning it's the key.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, let's keep as a piece of advice from Antoni to well plan your 6 months residency and acceleration. That will be the key in succeeding and taking most advantage of the program. Just to continue with you, Antoni, because you were part of these SMA, so startup meets artist track, so a collaboration between startup and artist. And I was just wondering, why did you decide to apply as a joint team? Why did you choose this track instead of another one, for example?
In a matter of fact, I was the project was initiated by Claudia Schnuck. So this was the point where she knew already JECT-AI, New Maiden, and me. So I think she found a very nice relation between my practice and the JECT-AI startup. In that sense, for me, it was incredible opportunity to work with such a resource. I guess this now continues as a collaboration outside of the project. So I think this is quite fantastic. We continue to work together on new opportunities, and I'm actually creating new artworks also based on their data. I'm also consulting them to improve their services. So it's really interesting, the aftermath of the whole residency. And as I said before, 6 months perhaps sounds like a long period of time, but indeed it's not so long if you want to dive deeper into and to understand the infrastructure and the data. In this case, the data of the JECT-AI. For me, working with this data was the opportunity and very, very inspiring possibility to create an artwork that otherwise I wouldn't be able to do.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to see that the collaboration continues after the project and with different subjects, not just the artwork, but other ideas. That's great. Georgina, do you want to share maybe one tips on how to write the application? Do you remember something that maybe helped, or anything?
Yeah, so I think Suru had applied, I can't remember what it was for, like a different grant opportunity, and not been successful in that. So by the time the MediaFutures one rolled around, we were really intentional about learning the feedback from that one. So I would just recommend that if this isn't your first grant that you're applying to, but maybe you've tried in other rounds, like take some time to apply the feedback to this application. What we applied specifically for MediaFutures was that, previously when we applied around civic engagement, deliberative democracy, collective intelligence, it felt very like up here, right? Like that it was just this kind of like idea or philosophy that we're pitching, but actually this is supposed to be a product. We're a startup and we have to deliver value to a customer. So what we learn is, how do we bring what we're thinking about up here down to something that's tangible, that in an application can be articulated in terms of milestones and value proposition, and really what are we trying to achieve, and what's the output from the program. So I would recommend anyone who is starting from idea stage and this is an opportunity to build their product to think about that. The other tip I would say is a lesson learned, because it's not something that I appreciated, is like the timetable for MediaFutures is going to be critical in how you actually deliver value in the end and create something that, you know, is now innovation in a space, because it is over the summer. And so I would recommend anyone who's applying to think about who else do they need, not just like if they're just the startup or the artists in the startup, but like who else is in that ecosystem that you need support from and able to deliver it. For us, it was local government, who by like July just, you know, closed down until September. But we had planned to work with them over the summer in testing the product. Of course, that didn't happen. And so just think about who your stakeholders are to make this like the best project possible, and really what do they look like over the summer to reduce the risk that actually things stall and you don't like meet those milestones that you'd love to hit through the project.
Ania and Dejha, and then we'll jump to the Q&As from the chat. Maybe do you want to share some tips about the application or the residency program?
Absolutely. I think in terms of the application, it was important for us to really focus in on what the value was for MediaFutures, because I think with any project, you can look at it through so many different lenses. Mm-hmm. And so especially if you are adapting a project, which we created this soft evidence as a specific brief for MediaFutures, so we were able to really tailor it to the specific requirements. But if you are applying existing idea, like the example Georgina just gave, I think it's really important to run it through the engine of all of the requirements. It's also very helpful in the application. This is how the jury will even judge the work. And I think these aspects speak to what is the most important for MediaFutures and the value of all the participants as well. So this was an aspect that we kept in mind in the proposal phase and in the writing phase, but also through our check-ins with you, Luis, throughout the process, always coming back to this criteria, right? Because in the process, you can always kind of get into rabbit holes and you can shift the focus, which sometimes is helpful. And I think and iterative process that can refine the project, and being open to that, I think, is important. But in our conversations with Luis and our checkpoints, we were always coming back to that brief. And I think, again, it comes back to creating an artwork that is authentic to our practice and to our concept, but also continually speaks to the criteria and the brief from MediaFutures.
Yeah, and not criteria, just also requirements, like technical requirements, but the goal of why MediaFutures exists and what they're trying to achieve and do in the world. And then finding a sweet spot where your practice or your artwork or your idea actually aligns in a good way with what MediaFutures is trying to achieve and how they're trying to tackle misinformation and disinformation in new and effective ways.
Very much. Thank you to all of you for your testimony, your answers. That was great, and your presentation, of course. So for the audience, if you want to see how they develop, how they discover a bit more about their project, you can check on MediaFutures. We shared the link on the chat, so feel free to follow them. I think, Garrett, you can share with us some questions from the chat. Just wanted to say something. We had a webinar last month in December, and it's recorded and it's online. And we explained the different tracks, how we will support every team, how we will release money, etc., etc. Everything is well detailed. So if you have any question, you can also go and see this video. I'm sure it will help, but of course we will answer also your questions. So Gary.
Yes, thank you very much, Louise, and thank you so much for our teams for these exciting insights. I was quite busy answering questions in the chat as much as I could, and indeed I see a lot of application-related requests. What track should I apply to? Should I apply to SFC, SMA, or AFM track? Once again, I've posted our YouTube channel for you in the chat. As Louise mentioned in our first webinar, we mostly answered these questions. And if you still have more specific questions or individual questions, contact us at opencall@mediafutures.eu. And so from the audience, I have not received any direct questions for the teams yet, which is why I would revert to my some of my own notes, which I have made while listening with one ear. Louise, Igor, if you have any questions in mind as well for the teams, please share them as well. But for Dejha and Ania, I was really interested in your project, and I was thinking, what were some of the reactions to your artwork that your artwork has generated, and what effect did you hope for, and what effect did you actually achieve with this artwork, in your opinion?
Yeah, we've been very pleased with how it's been received, and also the circles and conversations that it's opened up for us. So the work isn't released yet because we are planning and sorting out it being an exhibition, where that's going to go and when. But just with the concept being out and the video that's kind of discussing the project, we've been invited to participate in conversations, for example, at MIT's Open Documentary Lab. And our project was included in their latest deepfake report, which is really exciting, as well as had some other opportunities to speak about the project and its relationship to deepfakes and synthetic media, which is a subject that's just going to get more and more relevant. So it's been really exciting, and I think that it's also bringing us closer into the academic circles that are dealing with these questions from that end. And we really love this combination of where art can become a kind of arm of activism for some of the complex thought work going on in academia, where that can meet policy. So it's really multifaceted, and great to see that the artwork is being seen and appreciated by circles outside the art world, because it hasn't even been seen just from a conceptual level, and also its potential to be educational, to affect policy, and to be part of society's kind of learning about how to do these issues. So that has been a dream, and then we're really excited when people can actually see the artwork. I think it's going to magnify all of that momentum even more.
Thank you very much. So really a lot of interest gained through MediaFutures in this artwork. And one other question I have for Georgina. With PSI, you have managed to provide a tool that facilitates discussions about very complex social topics. I was wondering what sort of customers or interest have you been able to raise, who used this tool so far, and really what complex subjects were you able to solve with this, because it sounds quite interesting.
Outside, there's just a question in the chat for me from Roland, which is kind of similar, how you're addressing citizen engagement within your beta testing. So we are right now, like I said, beta testing. We have kind of like a private pilot program that we're running with a number of organizations. So one of them is the London Borough of Lambeth in South London. Another pilot organization that we're hoping to work with is a city in the US, and we're reaching out to other really cool like potential partners as well. So Black Thrive Global is another partner who were hoping to use SCI to do some of their community engagement and consultations within Black communities. As well as Nesta, who we as Suru are like always look up to in terms of their collective intelligence work. And really from the beta testing, what we're hoping to do is, you know, get these organizations to ask the questions that they are looking for a response for from their communities. So for example, Lambeth is going to be around community safety and violence reduction in South London. We have other questions from other partners that look at kind of building trust within communities between institutions like the police and different communities. And so what we're hoping to do with those is test and have an understanding of like what's the user experience for the community members who are taking part in these consultations. Are they learning from other people? Is it a social experience for them? Do they leave learning more about these very tricky social topics than they did before, or than they would have just reading what's available in terms of other people's perspectives online? So that's kind of where we are. Just to also say and like give a shout out to MediaFutures, because of their support and what we were able to build as part of the program. We're now a Techstars company, and so we're partway through a Techstars accelerator that's specifically looking at reducing barriers to people engaging equitably with social outcomes. And it's because we were able to build as part of MediaFutures that we now have Techstars support to grow and scale. And so it's really important, I think, that for us actually, that like MediaFutures is part of a wider strategy, I guess, around, you know, where does this help our startup get to next? And for us, it was into another program that has now more of a focus on go-to-market and scaling.
Thank you so much, Georgina. It is really fantastic for us to hear how MediaFutures has been helpful. And maybe as we have less than 3 minutes left, we can go to our next slide. We indicate again the deadline, so please have this in mind. And moving on the next slide, we would like to invite you to get in touch with us. And if you have any questions related to our open call, please send us an email to the opencall@MediaFutures email address, and we will take care and answer your questions there. More information and guidelines with all the details can be accessed on our website. We have a special section there for you, which is the MediaFutures.eu #opencall. So there will be the useful guidance also as per the eligibility conditions, etc. So let's go to our next slide. And one last announcement. The matchmaking for startups and artists begins now. So if you are a startup or an artist and you have the chance to get to know other exciting startups, SMEs, and artists from the media sector. So this is a unique chance to find a partner and jointly apply for the Startup Meets Artist track, our collaborative track for artists and startups. At this point, I would also like to mention that if you already have ties to a startup or an artist, you can of course apply together. The matchmaking is just an additional tool provided by the MediaFutures Consortium, aiming to help you find a partner if you don't have one yet. So if you cannot participate in today's matchmaking session, you also have the opportunity to schedule meetings with attendees flexibly and on your own schedule until the end of the open call. So that being said, I would like to thank my exceptional MediaFutures colleagues and panelists today, Gerrit, Louise, Igor, and Fernanda. and our fantastic panelists from our first cohort, Ania and Dejha, Georgina and Antoni. It was a great pleasure having you all today. I am glad that the MediaFutures experience was a fruitful and constructive one, and I am sure that this session helped inspire many of our viewers and inspire them to apply and learn more about our program. Also, a big thank you to Gerrit and the MediaFutures team for helping answering all the questions in the chat. And we really encourage you to apply. And we will have a third call next year, but it's best to benefit and apply now. So thank you so much. Best of luck with your application. And we wish you the best of success.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.